Hi DOOLENDELLA landowners, yes, I'm talking specifically to you today. If you've got land in DOOLENDELLA and you want to understand what makes up the development potential and ultimately the sales value of your land, then you're going to want to listen in for the next 5 minutes with this video. Okay, landowners in DOOLENDELLA, these are some of the crucial tools to understanding the development potential of your land and ultimately the sales value. Now the first one, and we're going to be delving into this, is through Brisbane City Council. Free tool, you can access it at home. You go to the Planning and Development tab, then go through to the interactive mapping tool, put in DOOLENDELLA, and it'll bring up these aerial maps. Now as you can see here, I have the aerial maps open. You can see Redhead Street, Crossacre Street, etc. and a lot of orange. Now the development potential of your land and the foundation of it begins with the zoning. Now you're in a bit of a tricky area because they've blanketed this area as emerging communities. That means that they want to see development happen in the future. So you're not actually zoned for residential development today under this emerging communities zoning. So the process that you go through to get approvals has a few more layers to it. So just remember your block is zoned emerging communities, but I'll go through what is actually underneath that and what we need to look out for shortly. So you've got emerging communities. Now the next thing that happens is we look for, from a development perspective, what are the overlays on your land. Now overlays are special uses that council has put on areas that they do not want to see development encroach within or go over the top of. Special uses they do not want to see houses and development encroach of or go over the top of. We're going to run through a few crucial ones today. Now the first is what we call high significant vegetation or biodiversity areas. These are the green areas that you can see in your area. Now these are all fancy development terms for important trees. These are trees that from a state government level and from a local government level they want to see protected and maintained. Now this could be, there is wildlife and habitat within there, could be koalas in there, could be protected, again, important trees. But what it means from a development perspective, as an example here, as you can see in the corner of Rockfield Road and Redhead Street, you've got a big blob of this high significance biodiversity overlay. Now this means that the developable area of that block is restricted. I would say 40% of that land is now developable because of this high significance vegetation overlay. That is because Brisbane City Council and the state government do not want to see that removed. It's extremely hard to get that removed under the Brisbane City Council mapping. Now the only way to do it is to go to a state government level, which is pretty much extremely impossible to get it through. It will take years and years and years, and they also make it very hard, and they put a big offset, what they call an offset, which is another fancy word for clearing, an offset amount to clear those types of trees, and it's astronomical in Brisbane. So hence why you don't see development happen under these dark green high significance vegetation overlays. These are some slightly less ones, but they have the same principles. What you can do though from a development perspective is you can get a tree survey done on these blocks that have some of this vegetation to see if you can lessen the impact. And the way that you lessen the impact is you understand where the important trees are on that block and how those trees can possibly be retained and have development going around there. But ultimately, if you've got these overlays on your land, it does restrict the developable area and it does increase the development costs. Therefore, from a land value perspective on your end, as a developable piece of land, that land value goes down because of those factors. You've also got contours. Now contours are the slope of the land. Now why that's important is the slopier the land, the higher the civil cost. So you'll have more retaining, more earthworks, etc. And it's also important because you want the slope of the land to go down to council infrastructure like sewer, water, stormwater, etc. So the slopier the land, the more civil costs there can be, and also it's very important to get the right type of slope towards that council infrastructure and those council services. So that's another type of overlay from a development perspective you've got to be aware of. If you've got a genuinely undulating piece of land and it goes down towards that council infrastructure, that's great. We've also got to take into account what the civil costs might be, what the retaining and bulk earthworks might be. So that's another factor to take into consideration. Now what you have, I said earlier in the video about what's underneath the emerging community zoning. Now this is a local area plan under Brisbane City Council, and this is what will be approved through Brisbane City Council. This is a type of approval that can get through council because it's historically what they wanted to see happen in DOOLENDELLA. So this is underneath the emerging community zoning. So you can see here the lighter areas are very low density residential. Some of the darker ones, low density residential. Density just means how many. Low density means you can build less amount of homes. The lesser the amount of homes, the lower the value of that piece of land. The higher the density, the higher the value of that piece of land, because you can build more properties on there, smaller lot housing, townhouses, etc. Here's the other end of DOOLENDELLA. So you can see all these spotty areas on here as well. They're called landscape features, which are also, you'll see them overlap with what I said before, which is the biodiversity or the environmental overlays. Fancy words again, just for important trees. Right, so these are the crucial factors when it comes to the development potential of your land in DOOLENDELLA. So zoning, you have an emerging community zoning, you strip that back, you go underneath that, and you've got a local area plan, which I've highlighted, which you can access through Brisbane City Council as well. On top of that, you have overlays. We have a biodiversity overlay, which is a fancy word for trees. Very expensive to remove them, if you can remove them at all. That shrinks the developable area. You also have a number of contours, which are the slope of the land, and that affects things like retaining walls, bulk earthworks, and things like that when it comes to the actual development itself. Also, if it's sloping away from council services like sewer, water, stormwater. As you can hear, we're well versed in your area and understanding it intimately. We have a good team behind us. If you want us to specifically look at your land and give you some of this advice around town planning, engineering, environmental, there's a learn more button below. That'll book a complimentary call in with myself, a research call. We'll run through these factors. You can ask me any development questions as well within that call. It's 100% complimentary. I'd encourage you to hit that learn more button now if you want to have a chat with me. Otherwise, I appreciate you listening in to this video, and we'll talk again soon. Bye for now.